Hello, I'm Vince White. I am an employment attorney. I am answering publicly posted questions from YouTube users, getting folks the answers they need from an employment attorney. Like and subscribe, it helps me to help more people just like you. And remember, everybody works, not everybody wins. We have a question here from YouTube user Robert Owens. Robert asked us, I have a major question, and I want to know why this happens. When you have an EEOC charge against a company, why do so many attorneys tell you that they'll pick up your EEOC case near the end of the EEOC investigation or after the EEOC investigation? Okay. Just quick note, that is against my advice. I think that there is a tremendous amount that attorneys can do from the advent of an EEOC case, or at least as early as you can possibly bring them into the EEOC. The point in hiring an attorney is to reduce risk and add value. And yeah, you're shifting some of the work and some of the burden of the EEOC process on the attorney as well. But at the core of it, the attorney's job is to reduce the risk to the case, make it more likely the case will recover, and that if it recovers, it will recover hopefully more. That's why you hire an attorney, generally speaking, in this field. So my standing advice has been and always will be, hire the attorney, if you can, as early in the EEOC process as possible, or even before you file the EEOC. Let them handle the filing from scratch. Now, why do attorneys do this? Why do attorneys tell potential clients to go file their own EEOC and call them back later? Many reasons, and I'm going to go through some of the most typical, and some of these will be disheartening for you as a potential plaintiff who might need to hire an employment attorney. You might say employment attorneys are jerks, and largely you'd be right. But it's not everybody, and that's why we have videos on the channel about, how to find a good employment attorney, what to look for, stuff like that, right? Because there are good employment attorneys in the world. I'm not saying we're all garbage. I'm just saying a fair number of us are less than stellar human beings. Why is that? High conflict industry with the perception of easy money. That's what it is, right? Like, we're not. It's a low quality of life. There's a lot of fighting, a lot of just horrible interactions with other human beings that people engage in because they want the money at the end of the rainbow, so, at the end of the case. And so you get some folks that are not great, for lack of a fuller range of vocabulary options on YouTube. I have to watch what I say. Okay, so why do they do it? The most innocent reason is they're overworked. There's just not enough employment attorneys in the country, frankly, and in certain markets there's almost none or very few. And then on top of that, you're going to have firms who will do like rotations where they have attorneys with heavy caseloads take a certain percentage of the potential client calls. This is, of course, stupid and bad for everyone. Bad for the firm because people are not necessarily going to be taking the time and attention to potential client calls that they should be. Bad for the potential clients because you're going to get attorneys who are rushed and not caring as much. And let me just put it in context, right? If you're, let's say, a mid-level associate, and you got a deposition tomorrow you got to prep for, and you got 4 of your actual clients called today, you got to return their calls by the end of the day because your boss says somebody calls you got to call back by the end of the day. You can't just leave with your clients uncalled. And then you got a trial 2 weeks from now, and that trial, oh my God, the firm's got $100,000 tied up in that case because they supported that client to hell and back. And if you lose that trial, the firm's going to lose the $100,000, and that's, well, it's about what you base before you get your percentage of what you win for your clients. So maybe if you lose that $100,000 for the firm, they just look at your wages and they say they're going to fire you. Terrifying. And you're in a firm where like 1 out of 14 of the attorneys in the field of law are going to attempt suicide, and like we've got our own addiction and alcoholism chapters for treatment because like the substance abuse rate is in the high 40%. And how did I get in this field? Oh my God. All that's going on, and then the front desk or the call center, whoever it is, calls you up and is like, hey, you're up. You got the next call. They're on the line right now. Got to help the person. Well, in that context, with all of those things ping-ponging off of your frantic little associate brain, are you going to do right by that person? Are you going to get on that phone and be like, yes, I am committed to spending 15 to 30 minutes helping you? I suspect you might not. You might fall short, even if you're swell. It's just a reality. So having overworked attorneys with heavy caseloads answer potential client calls will cause those attorneys to say things like, oh, you haven't even filed your EEOC yet? Yeah. Just don't call me until you're fired, or file the EEOC on your own and call me when it's done. That is not a good outcome for anyone. That was bad for the firm. That was bad for the potential client. It was bad all around. But it happened because an overworked attorney got shoveled a potential client call. The end. It just is what it is, right? And I would call upon the partnership and the managing partners of the world to not do that. Don't do that. Just think of a better system. Easy for me to say, I know, but still, be better. Okay. The next reason why attorneys often will mistakenly want clients to do their own EEOC is that sometimes people call up with cases that are somewhere between, I don't know, 20% BS and 100% BS, right? That happens. Like, those cases call. And contrary to public opinion, popular opinion, I guess, plaintiff side employment attorneys don't like taking cases that are full of the poo, right? It's not good. Why? Because we spend an incredible amount of time and money on those cases. And the average liar is going to get caught. And so if we have been scammed, right, and we do really act as the first layer, the first filter of truth detector in this industry. If somebody calls us up and their story doesn't hang together, we're just going to say no thank you, right? And we have to, because, again, we don't want to suborn perjury. We don't want to be a person who represents liars, right? We don't want to ruin lives based on nonsense that somebody made up and told us, because that's what we do. We do the defendants that we go after, often those lives are ruined, right? It's very ugly. But even if you're a monster, you still don't want to represent liars, because liars will have a lower chance of recovery and a very high chance of making you lose tons of money and hundreds of attorney hours. So what often attorneys will think is, oh, if I make these people do their own EEOC, after they do the EEOC and they call me for representation, I can just say, hey, I need your complaint as filed. I need the position statement. I need your rebuttal. I need to know what you demanded. I want your communications with the investigator. I want to know how the employer responded to your demands at mediation. Did you agree to mediate? The whole kit and caboodle. And you read through that, and that is a very easy way, potentially, to catch some low-hanging fruit in terms of lies, because defense attorneys get paid somewhere between like $500 and $1,500 an hour to prove a potential client is lying. That's what a position statement is, right? They're engaged in their best possible efforts to be like, this person who filed this charge is a liar, and here's why. And plaintiff's attorneys will read that and read how the potential client has responded in the rebuttal and look at it and be like, yeah, that explanation for why the things in the complaint weren't accurate, not good, not compelling, not good at all. And likely they'll say, hey, listen, this potential client might be a liar, just full of it, and they won't issue representation. So often the EEOC process will be used as kind of a litmus test for truth. Also, not great, because generally speaking, putting a pro se litigant against a high caliber, highly compensated, deeply experienced, crafty defense attorney, yeah, they're going to poke some holes in the story, not necessarily because the story had holes, but because they're incredible at what they do, and they get a new boat if they mess this person's case up, right? Like, just be honest. Like, they're good at what they do. They wouldn't get the big bucks if they weren't. I'm not saying They're monsters. But I am saying it's their job to make people who were the victims of legitimate hate crimes in the workplace, sexual assault in the workplace, sexual harassment in the workplace, it's their job to make those people look like liars. And they do it hundreds of times a year, and the average potential client does it once in a lifetime. And so it's kind of lazy to read the back and forth between a pro se litigant and experienced defense counsel in the EEOC and be like, oh, I don't know about this. I don't know about this potential client. Dumb, frankly, right? Like, have your own conversation with this person. Make it a kind conversation, obviously, but you can figure out if this person's being frank with you or not. Like, it's, 99% of the time we catch the liars on the way in, right? We can't afford to miss that. The next reason why is actually very disheartening to me. Why I think a lot of attorneys will tell folks to go file their own EEOC. We work in a field where two things happen. One, people with mental health issues are, in fact, dealing with disabilities in the workplace, right? A mental health issue is a disability, very clear cut. And often they will need accommodations. And so they call attorneys. But attorneys shy away from those cases, sometimes certain attorneys, because it can be difficult. It can be difficult to represent people with mental health issues, especially if you don't know what you're doing, right? My family has a very high instance of a bipolar condition, and so I'm very experienced in dealing with bipolar condition. My mother was schizophrenic, right? Like, I mean, this is not new to me. And the problem is that attorneys who are intimidated by these things, who don't view people coming to them with legitimate mental health issues, who can be incredible at their job, right? I mean, a beautiful mind, right? That person was dealing with some very serious mental health issues. He was also one of the most talented mathematicians the world has ever known, right? Like, just let's get real here. These are disabilities that can be accommodated. There's no question. But often, attorneys will try to get people off the phone by saying, just do your EEOC first and then call me once they find out that a person's dealing with a mental health disability. The other thing attorneys will do is when they can't tell if somebody is unwell or not, they'll say to go do the EEOC as a litmus test. Again, not for lies this time, but to see how the interactions and the writings go, to see if they want to represent this person, because they might just think the person's dealing with a mental health issue, and maybe they're not. So that's often a reason why people say do the EEOC first. And the last reason is also very just that reason I just described is very disheartening to me. Like, that's not what we're supposed to be doing in terms of helping people. It's wrong. It's wrong, and the industry needs to be better. There's no question, right? And part of that is there should be, like, no one comes around and teaches employment attorneys anything, frankly. Like, law school doesn't teach us how to be employment attorneys. Like, the people who teach at law school would not make it in this field, right? It's just not. First off, those who can't teach, that is all the more true in law school. I mean, law school does not prepare litigators at all. And certainly doesn't prepare contingency litigators. Like, that is not, just not a thing at all. But also, there's not like anyone's ever gone around, no one ever approached me and was like, hey, sometimes you represent people with mental health disabilities, and here's a packet of skills to help you do that. No, they don't do that, right? So you get on the phone with somebody who just happens to be cycling, and you don't recognize it, and the person's very agitated, very high energy, and you don't recognize what's going on. That's going to be a bad day for everyone. But the average employment attorney has zero chance of getting that interaction correct in a way that will help move the case forward and do right by their client. So the other part of this is just there's no training or skill development in that realm whatsoever. It just isn't. It's just a reality. So I don't know how we're going to go about doing that. I mean, I've had a lot of, I try to mentor people on this topic sometimes. Not that I think that I'm like amazing at it, but I do think I'm better than average at it. But even then, the mentoring takes the form of like I'm referencing like TV shows. That's you know like, oh, this person's I've had an amazing. I'll give you an example. Associate comes to me and is like, oh, I've had amazing interactions with a client for 9 months. Everything was going great. Case is going great. Case is really valuable. And the client is just screaming at me today and making things up and claiming that I'm like hacking his or her phone. That's a bad day. That's a bad day for everybody. And I told that, there's obviously no identifying characteristic of the client or the associate, frankly. I told that associate, okay, so like, did you watch Firefly, the TV show? And she looks at me like I'm the dumbest person in the world. Yeah. Like, okay. The pilot. What did the pilot say? Like a leaf on the wind. You're engaged. You're dealing with someone who's having an episode. A very serious mental health episode. And you need to go into that conversation with the mentality of being a leaf on the wind. And the goal is to get your client to their mental health professional. Because you want to help your client, because you want to protect the case, and while your client is not receiving the help that they need during this episode, the case is in peril. And frankly, just because you're trying to be a decent human being, right? Like, bad things happening to a human being, any human being, but especially a human being that your job is to help, well, get them to the helper. The helper's that person. It's not us. We don't know what we're doing. We're not mental health professionals. So get them to the helper, right? And often we're in the strange situation of being given a lot of face time during a mental health episode because this is a primary. These cases can be a primary concern. They can be overwhelmingly agitating to people. Also, frankly, when you fight for people, they tend to trust you more. And so if you're really fighting for your clients, often in some of their darkest moments, they'll call you. And it gives you an opportunity, potentially, to help. To utilize that trust that you've built up through your loyal actions, your tenacious fighting on their behalf, and say, hey, you are just treating me like I am garbage. Do you think, based on our 9 months of positive interactions, do you think you could do me a solid and just call your mental health professional today? Because you're hurting my feelings quite a bit. And I'll be fine, but I'm worried about you. And I just wish if we ever had a good working relationship, can you just do one thing for me? It works. You can't be forceful. Leaf on the wind. Got to be a leaf on the wind. You can't force people to do things. But fairly high success rate on that. And it's way better than calling in wellness checks, which I hate to do. I hate to call in wellness checks for a variety of reasons, including sometimes wellness checks end up with altercations with the police where people get hurt. So, especially depending on what your skin color might be, right? So, wellness checks are not ideal. So, you got a lot to do. So, what attorneys will do is say, hey, go to your EEOC to get rid of you, to get you off the phone, or just because they want to, similar to the lying test, see how you handle the EEOC to see if maybe you're dealing with a condition that could make you more difficult to represent. And that's horrible. That one went really long. I hope I did that justice. And the last most common reason is just people will not want a case. right? Like if somebody's presenting me a case and I just don't believe them, or I don't want to represent them, or I think that the case, like I couldn't afford, like there's cases that it's going to cost me $100,000 to litigate that are worth 20 grand. Those cases exist. And those people, when I tell them, listen, I can't afford to represent you, they get really mad. Rightfully so. It's a wild thing to hear. Both because they think their case is probably worth millions, and also because the person you called for help said, no, I can't put 100 grand into you in your case. That's really hard. It's really, really hard to hear. So instead, what a lot of attorneys will do is say, instead of saying, like, listen, I can't represent you, I'm not going to take this case, they don't want to have those hard conversations. They'll say, hey, just go to your EEOC and then call me when you're done. And they'll get off the phone and they'll call the front desk and put that potential on a do not call list. So the next time they call, they don't get through to an attorney. This happens. People do this. My firm does not do this. But people do this. I know many firms that do this. And that's bad for everyone. It's bad for the system. It's bad for the field of law. It's bad for the potential. It's bad for the firm. Like, it creates ill will. It makes people feel abandoned. It is horrible in every single way. But it's really common. It's really common. And it's common because a young associate will come in and handle, you know, maybe their first potential client call. Like, oh, I don't know. I'm so sorry, sir. I don't know if I can help you. And there's a pause on the phone, and that potential client says, I'm going to slit your throat. You dumb effing so-and-so. I know where your office is, and I'm going to come down there, and the minute you come out, you're effing dead. It happens. It happens. And that associate will be terrified and not know how to deal with this because that associate, could be the first day, right? And this is not to cast dispersions upon potential clients in this field. Every group of human beings has human beings who do and say bad things. But that associate may, for the rest of his or her career, when they don't want a case, just say, oh yeah, go file your EEOC and then call me for help after. Hang up, call front desk, do not call this, don't let that person ever talk to us again. Some firms have software that do it automatically. So even the front desk or the call center doesn't have to deal with those people. Not good. You got to have the tough conversations. It's important. It's very important for a variety of reasons. People need to know why you're not helping them. Like if somebody's going to challenge you, like, why don't you want to represent me? Because you're shouting at me. Oh, because you changed your story 3 times. Because you can't share your story effectively, right? You can't share your story, I may not be able to tell you. Or maybe you just won't tell me your story. People call up employment attorneys for help and then refuse to tell the story. How is this going to go, right? And when they say, why won't you make me an offer of representation? The response is, oh, because you won't tell me what happened to you. You have to have those conversations because they then need to call. They probably do have a case and they probably do need help. And the next attorney they call, they might tell the story to. Is it going to make you money? No. No, because they're mad at you now. What do you mean I won't? Right? They're not going to hire you. But they probably are going to calm down, call somebody tomorrow, and understand fundamentally that they have to share what happened if they're going to get an offer of representation, right? Or they just can't be abusive on the phone. They can't scream at the non-attorney staff. They can't make threats of violence. They can't, all of these things happen. And if somebody says, why won't you represent me? The response is, because you did this. Because you said this. Because your story changed 6 times. Because I don't know if I believe you. These are things you should hear as a potential when you're looking for an attorney. And too many attorneys are just going to say, yeah, go file the EEOC. Call me back when you're done. Kick it down the road, somewhere between 3 months and 4 years. On average, 3 to 9 months. So, Robert Owens, this was an incredibly long answer. I hope it was helpful. Also, I hope I'm not disheartening people too much. This was more of a video for employment attorneys, specifically I think for managing partners, about like how they should structure their intake. I can actually, like, if you're a firm out there and you're having trouble with intake, I'm not going to help you because you're my competitor. But I can introduce you to professionals who can like help you to set up a system by which you will make more money. And by making more money in this field, it means you're helping more people. I'll make that introduction. I am thrilled to do that. I'm just not going to help you. I guess this video is meant to help you. It's meant to help attorneys do better at intake. And they're not going to watch it. But Robert Owens, I hope I answered your question. And I feel like I'm going to get some hate for this video. I feel very confident that I'm going to get some hate. So, remember, everybody works. Not everybody wins.